Thank you. The gentleman is back. I now recognize Mr. Jimenez from Florida for his second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, as we talk about the big threat, you said the two big threats are the CCP and AI. And we also talk here about how we need to start to decouple, but if I were to tell you that I just heard of a major purchase of Chinese computers from one of our major departments, like $500 million worth, all right? Kind of makes you start, you know, are they listening to us, or who are they listening to that they would go and buy $500 million in computers made in China or Chinese company? So I think we need to get that word out, and I think there's you know, since I serve on a select committee on China, you know, it's one of the areas that I find where we have bipartisan, you know, support, and we kind of think the same way. We may not have the same solutions or maybe an iteration of solutions, but we're on the same path, you know, and it's good to see that America has finally woken up and collectively we're working to address this threat. I want to go to AI. You know, people are trying to say, hey, we need to slow down AI. Frankly, we cannot slow down AI because our adversaries are not going to slow down with AI. And they understand the potential of artificial intelligence and all sorts of things, but in military hardware, AI, if they get that advantage on us, it's huge, huge. So we have to keep going. But that being said, AI has the potential to do incredible good, unbelievable good. The mankind, womankind, you know, the human race can just explode, all right, with new findings, new knowledge, new abilities through the use of this technology. But then AI also can be incredibly destructive. So the only defense that we're going to have against AI is AI. So are we developing that capability too? You have AI can do good, but then you also know that AI can do bad. So you have to have the defensive AI to fight the bad AI. Are we working on that too?
Yeah, I mean, I am not an AI technical expert. I know that there is a lot of work being done both on the defensive side and on the offensive side. And I agree with you, Congressman, that there are some amazing things that can be done with this capability. But I've also, probably much like you, seen a dark side when I was in the Army, when I was deployed many times, and when I was the head of counterterrorism at the White House. And what I worry about are our adversaries, whether it's a nation state like China or a terrorist or a criminal, using these to create malware, cyber weapons, to create bioweapons, to do genetic engineering, to do things that, frankly, we may not do as a values-based democracy. And I think we need to have those really difficult and important conversations, because I really do believe in the power of good for technology, but AI will also be the most powerful weapons of this century. And the most powerful weapons of the last century, nuclear weapons, were built and maintained by governments who were disincentivized to use them. This technology is built by companies whose job it is to maximize profits for their shareholders. So it's a different conversation, and I applaud the efforts to try and get ahead of it, both by the Congress as well as many across the federal government. I think it's incredibly important.
Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you, sir.
The gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
Let me thank you for the courtesies extended and thank the ranking member for the courtesies extended. Appreciate being delayed for other meetings, but let me welcome you, Director Easley. And I'm hoping to get some real quick questions in. I invited you last year. It starts out with an invitation to the Energy Brain Trust that I host with Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. You were kind enough to send someone, but I am now inviting you for 2023. This Brain Trust has been around now for more than 30 years, and we have enjoyed the participation of many in the administration. So someone is taking notes, and I appreciate it very much that you're doing so. I want to just continue on the line of questioning. I find the production domestically of chips, and I wanted to raise some quick questions. How important is the manufacturing of chips in the United States to cybersecurity, the security of our cyber system? Doing our chips, having that manufacturing capacity right here in the United States.
I think it's hugely important for the U.S. to have that chip manufacturing capacity. From a technology perspective, I mean, certainly in terms of cybersecurity systems, chips are not a huge piece of the actual process, but they're part of the technology, absolutely.
We remember that during the pandemic when phones, cars, and others were not able to be manufactured because of the supply chain. Let me quickly move to Houston. The list of critical infrastructure includes petrochemical companies. In fact, years past, when we were thinking about cyber or thinking about infrastructure, it was listing these fixed entities, and we which heavily rely on automation. Have petrochemical companies engaged with CISA in order to develop a good working relationship to deal with their critical infrastructure problems? And I got another quick question.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. We serve as the sector risk management agency for the chemical sector and have great relationships with those industries.
One of the gaps in CISA in terms of across the nation are NGOs, faith organizations, neighborhood organizations, small businesses, maybe even small colleges. And so I'd be interested in working with the agency for a roundtable in laying the groundwork of informing that kind of level in the United States that are not necessarily informed. Is that a good idea to make sure that we can have CISA in our communities talking to that level and to be able to raise up their understanding of the importance of cybersecurity?
Love it.
We all have had the horrors of ransomware. We are facing it, the threats over the years, the stories, the tall tales, if you will. And Russia continues to harbor large numbers of ransomware gangs. We know this threat will remain forward, but I've been impressed about what you've done. Do you want to expand a little bit on how you've gotten your hands around ransomware? And I'm looking at my time, so let me put the second question in. AI is here. I was just talking to my seatmate here, and I was saying it was coming, and he made it very clear that we both agree it is here. I'm concerned about large populations, low income, minorities, rural persons, out of the circle of even understanding AI and its good and its dangers. Maybe you can comment on that as it relates to cybersecurity and maybe the gaps of knowledge. So first, Russia and the ransomware, and then second, the AI and its accessibility to those low-income communities. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. On ransomware, we have done so much since the summer of 2021, actually following the Colonial Pipeline attack. Specifically, we stood up stopransomware.gov, which is a one-stop shop website that brings together all of the federal resources of the government to explain what ransomware is, what to do if you get hit with ransomware, and more importantly, how to build resilience to ransomware. We also stood up the Joint Ransomware Task Force recently, and we're very focused on target-rich, resource-poor, those communities that frankly, like schools and hospitals and water facilities, local election offices that don't have those resources. So we are very focused on providing things like ransomware assessments and best practices that they can use to deal with the scourge of ransomware. The other thing that we just launched is our ransomware warning vulnerability pilot, where entities, no matter what your size is, can sign up for vulnerability scanning and then get a prioritized list of where they might have vulnerabilities, where ransomware actors, like Russian-sponsored ransomware actors, have specifically leveraged ransomware, so that allows them to patch those. And then finally, our pre-ransomware initiative, where we're getting tips from industry, from researchers, from threat intel that tell us that malware has been deployed but not yet activated. It's usually hours to days before malware is used to encrypt. And then we reach out in our field force. We've done it with K through 12 schools, with local towns to help them prevent a really bad day. And that is the virtue of the model we've built with trust with industry. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and we're going to continue to drive that forward. On artificial intelligence, again, there are great capabilities. I think we need a really hard look at who these capabilities, who they're being used by, who they can be made available to, but also the guardrails for safety and security that are being put in place even as we innovate in this space. And so I think it's a longer, much, hugely important conversation. So I appreciate the question, Congresswoman.
I look forward to engaging through this committee or otherwise. I think it's an important discussion for members of Congress.
Thank you,
and
ma'am.
I thank you so very much. Thank you for the time. I yield back. Let's do it. Thank you.
Generally yields back, and the end is almost near, Director. I think, though, the fact that everybody has been here today for a second round of questions, I mean, we've never had attendance like this, but that just shows how much everybody respects your opinion and how important of an issue this is. So I'm gonna recognize myself for my second round of questions. And I had a couple on secure by design and default, but I really enjoyed the questions before. I thought there was a great conversation. So I'm going to move ahead to my staff actually prepared enough questions if we had 8 rounds of questions. So I'll probably submit a couple and have you respond in writing. But I did want to get to you on, we talked a lot about the JCDC in our last hearing. We've talked a little bit about it today as well. And I've spoken to a couple people that are on, or companies that are on the JCDC, and we've heard that some of the companies are frustrated that information coming out of the JCDC is frequently already publicly available and isn't as timely as it could be. What information do organizations get through the JCDC that goes beyond what DHS already publishes through other channels that many JCDC members already participate in, already have access to? And I wanted to add, they all love the idea. They all love the idea of the JCDC, but they did have this complaint about it. So if you could answer, that'd be great.
Yeah, and one of our operating principles at CISA is to treat feedback as a gift. And we are constantly talking to our partners so that we can improve, because at the end of the day, the model has to be we're transparent, we're responsive, and we're adding value. If we're not adding value to the job of a cyber defender, we should go away. I know how hard that job is, and we're just trying to help them. Anecdotally, I think we've heard various flavors of, these products are fantastic, and these products are things that we've already seen. So I don't want to put too much into the fact that these are all that you might hear 1 or 2 things. I would like to actually come back to you maybe with a more fulsome presentation based on recent feedback. We did 2 roundtables out at RSA. I mean, I will tell you what's substantively different in the products and the advisories that we've put out over the past year is, first of all, they're all multi-sealed. And that makes a difference to have CISA and FBI and NSA, and by the way, our international partners on there as well. It's sending finally a coherent signal to industry that this is the voice of the U.S. government collaboratively providing you feedback. And frankly, we have those enriched by our industry partners who are giving us information that helps to make those products better. So again, I'll go back and get you more specifics on that, but I think we've really evolved that into a better place, to be honest with you.
Right. And look, everybody that I've spoken to, they said CISA, when they provide information, has been responsive much more than other agencies that are involved. So that's great on your part. So we do appreciate that. We've also, so how does, there was also some comments about how membership decisions are made. I know we can, maybe we can work that into the presentation, but could you talk about how CISA balances the benefits of having a wider range of partners at the table with the risk that too large of a JCDC could reduce the efficiency of operational collaboration and decrease trust between the members?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. You just said it, trust, right? We have a lot of people, Ranking Member Swalwell mentioned, a lot of people want to join the JCDC, and we want to benefit from their expertise and their vulnerability and their capabilities. But we also want to make sure that we have trust groups. So we started out, when we set this thing up in August of 2021, we started out with the big tech companies. Why? Because they have the most global visibility If you're an infrastructure provider, a cybersecurity vendor, or software vendor, they have global reach. And we wanted to help solve that visibility problem that was illuminated in SolarWinds, where we lacked visibility. So we started out with a small group, but since that period of time, we have been adding on hundreds of partners. We're at 231. But the projects that we work on are basically 20 of these entities. And so we are keeping the trust groups small. We're focused on efforts that address the biggest risks to the nation. And we are constantly doing after-action reviews to ensure that we can actually take great advantage of the talents, the authorities, the capabilities. The one other thing I'd say, Chairman, is we talk a lot about industry, but the JCDC is actually industry, international partners, federal partners, and state and local partners. So when you think about the tapestry of visibility that comes together based on the inputs of all of those partners, I would challenge some of the comments about the lack of value. I think as we've evolved, I think we're getting into a place where that information is enriched and full of a lot more value than anything we've provided before from the federal government.
Director, I appreciate your answer. Like I said, I had a couple more, but I'm going to let you. Look, I'll send them and have you respond writing. I appreciate it, and I now yield to the ranking member, my colleague from California, Mr. Swalwell, for his second round.
Great. Thank you, Chairman. And just following up on my colleague from the Miami area, he talked about the concern about Chinese drones and Chinese technologies in our infrastructure, and I privately mentioned to him, but I'll mention to my other colleagues that John Garamendi and I introduced legislation this week called the Airport Infrastructure Vehicle Security Act, which would prohibit federal funds from being spent on Chinese buses. They are flooding our communities with cheap passenger buses, and it's not just that this hurts the ability to make it in America. They're wiring these buses up with Wi-Fi and other abilities to connect to the network. So we'll send that around to everyone. On AI, to kind of take this to the worst case scenario, I understand that a zero-click attack is where I could receive a text message or an email, and even with the best cyber hygiene, because it was sent to me, that's it, they're in. And I also understand that right now, to conduct those zero-click attacks, they're very resource intensive, they're very expensive. So adversaries have to really want to get into someone's system or device. Does AI put us at risk of significantly reducing the cost for the adversary to carry out a zero-click attack?
I mean, I don't have a technical study on that, but I would assume so. I think as much as AI can be used for amazing things, I think it can be used by our adversary to cause great damage. The saying, ranking member, is, you only have to be right once. As an adversary, as a defender, you got to be right all the time. Think about that in terms of the offense-defense overmatch of an adversary. Yeah. And so it makes our job even more difficult. Now, the optimists, and I used to be a big tech optimist, and now I'm a tech realist, that you'll say, well, we can also create these incredible defensive AI capabilities, and that's probably true.
Sure.
But the thing that I worry about is we are hurtling into this space driven by competition in business, not necessarily driven by safety or security concerns. And while I am, to Congressman Jimenez's point earlier, I am concerned about China, but look at the difference. China is focused on implementing AI with a huge amount of regulation, right? And so that's the difference. They are actually being very purposeful about how they're controlling and evolving that capability. We are not. And so I think we need to just think about what AI looks like in China and what AI looks like here and how it can be used for nefarious purposes.
Shifting to insurance, there's not a lot of insurers in the cyber market, and one insurer told me that the most successful insurer is not the person who has the most policies, because you would not be able to cover the risk if there was a significant, widespread attack. I know in the cybersecurity strategy that you put out, you do conceive or at least contemplate, a TRIA-like system. And I just wanted to know if you could just speak more to cyber insurance, and particularly I'm thinking of, the giants. They're going to figure it out, and they're going to have some of the best left of boom defenses. I really do worry though about the SMEs, the small and medium-sized businesses who you have described as target-rich cyber poor. So could you just wrap up here with my final minute just to speak to cyber insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, we are doing this study based on the National Cybersecurity Strategy. I think the difficulty kind of goes back to the fact that we do not have a comprehensive view of the landscape, because heretofore we don't have that legislation, or we don't have that implementation on CERCIA. I think that hinders cyber insurance companies from being able to price insurance policies if you don't understand what your baseline is for cyber incidents and attacks. It's also, some of the discussion on, I think Lloyd's made the decision that they exclude state actors. They exclude policies from state actors, the war exception, which would make it difficult if you connect like NotPetya and state-sponsored criminals. So it's a space that I think will benefit from a better understanding of the ecosystem, and I think a robust sort of TRIA-like study. I welcome that work to come, but it's also something I'd love to dig more deeply into, especially because you've got cowbell in your district, and we have talked to them before.
Great, thank you, and yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I almost made a cowbell question. I joked, but I didn't know. And I love the idea on cyber insurance. I think even though we don't have direct oversight here, I do sit also on the Financial Services Committee, the Insurance Subcommittee. So if we could somehow work out a hearing on that, I think it'd be great. But I want to thank Director Easterly for the valuable testimony and the members for their great questions today. The members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions. I know I do for you, and we would ask the witness to please respond to these in writing. Pursuant to Committee Rule 7D, the hearing record will be held open for 10 days. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.